like a rock. I've been in my Pinterest analytics and I'm looking at people's numbers dropping. I'm looking at numbers for our members, numbers for different people who are in Facebook groups, and they're like, what's going on? So today I'm going to share with you what's going on and how to change that. What does it mean? My name is Jennifer Priest, and I'm the founder here at Smart Creative Social and the creator of Smart Pin Pro, a membership that helps you create an organic traffic machine with Pinterest. Now, you might be thinking, well, why do I need to be on Pinterest? Well, Pinterest is a search engine and it is super duper powerful. And we want to be on Pinterest just like we want to be on Google. Okay. So in this broadcast, I'm going to talk about why your engagement numbers are nosediving, the 3 wrong things that you're pinning to make your numbers nosedive, the 1 metric you need to pay attention to instead of engagements, because engagement and impression is the stuff that they have right up at the top, and then what you can do to increase your ROI from Pinterest. And before we get into that, I want to ask you to join our free Facebook community. I have a link down in the description of this video that tells you to follow up on, create a follow-up conversation over in our Facebook group. I have tons of threads going on in there where you can go and join in on the conversation. And it's a great place to get information about Pinterest and to think about Pinterest in a different way. A lot of times we lump Pinterest in with other social media and we start thinking about it like that. But really, Pinterest is a lot like a search engine. It's a very unique thing. In fact, they probably haven't come up with a name for what it is yet other than it's Pinterest. So when we start thinking about numbers or metrics that we're going to be measuring on Pinterest, it's very easy because it's been lumped in with other social media platforms. It's very, very easy to say, oh, I'm going to track things like I would track on other platforms. Like I'm going to track engagements. I'm going to track impressions, right? Engagements is how many people engaged with the content. Did they click on it? Did they like it? Did they do something, engage with it in some way? Impressions is then another number, and that's what actually Pinterest has in their analytics by default. That shows how many people potentially saw this piece of content. Now, those things sound great, but when it comes to making decisions for our business, those aren't the numbers that we want to be looking at. So if you've been tracking things like engagement or impressions, you might notice that that number is really volatile. It fluctuates all the time. Here's why. One of the big things that I've seen happening on Pinterest, especially for any of you who've been on Pinterest for any amount of time, you've been in Facebook groups or you've taken courses, or maybe you grabbed somebody's free ebook on Pinterest, is that we see a lot of people pinning other people's pins. I actually call this OPP inside my program, Smart Pin Pro. And we treat OPP in a very special way because it's other people's pins. And so what happens when you pin other people's pins is that their pin can be doing really well. It can be doing really poorly. It can go up. It can go down. It can go up. It can go down. It can have a seasonality to it. In fact, a few years ago, I pinned a pin from another blogger friend of mine, and it went viral. And every summer, this pin goes viral, and it makes my numbers skyrocket. Now, if I was just paying attention to impressions and engagements and my overall numbers on Pinterest, it would look like my account was doing amazing. But if I go look at revenue over on my blog, there's no correlation, because what I'm doing is sending views to her content. And that's one of the big mistakes that I see people making, is they're pinning other people's pins without a serious plan in place, right? It's okay to pin other people's pins, but you've got to have a serious plan in place, a real reason for using them. And there are some real strategic ways for using other people's pins that I share inside my program. And they're not the reasons why everybody else is doing it. They're probably not the reasons that you've heard to do it. Like I've heard people say, oh, it's to be a good citizen or community member over on Pinterest. Pinterest does not give brownie points for pinning other people's content. All that pinning other people's content does, if you're not doing it in a very strategic way, is it muddies the waters of your analytics. It affects how your content performs. So that's one of the wrong things that I see people pinning, is other people's content. The other thing is that pinning the same thing over and over and over again, like the stuff that you've been pinning for years that hasn't gotten any results, and you're still pinning it because maybe you have it running on some kind of software that loops it, or maybe you have a VA who's pinning for you, and you're like, just pin everything again and again and again and again until it finally takes off at some point, right? That might be what's happening. Um, you don't want to be doing that. You want to pin things extremely strategically. And the other thing that I see people pinning is idea pins. Idea pins are great for engagement and for impressions, but idea pins are not going to get you the traffic. And this is the metric I really want you to be paying attention to, is looking at outbound clicks. We want to see impressions because that tells us how many people are potentially seeing our content. We want to look at engagement because that tells us how many people are engaging with our content. But what really makes a difference to our business is getting that traffic from Pinterest to come on over to our site, whether that's to purchase a product, which is a lot easier to do now actually on Pinterest, or that's to come and look at a blog post or to consume some content or get on your email list, get your free ebook or your lead magnet or whatever that is. We want to get people to come to our site. And the one metric on Pinterest that measures that is outbound clicks. That's the metric. Like when we have KPI charts that we share within SmartPin Pro that help you track like all of your metrics that you need to track. And we don't track them all because they're not all that important. We track the bare minimumist, if that's a word, metrics that help us make decisions for our business. And the number one metric that'll help you make decisions for your business on Pinterest is going to be outbound clicks. That's the one that you want to be paying attention to. So when we talk about increasing your ROI from Pinterest, right? It's very easy to look at those analytics numbers and get bummed out when you see that like impressions are down and you see that engagement is down. But you need to be looking at outbound clicks. Are outbound clicks down? And then what's happening with those people that are clicking? Are they coming over to your site and converting, right? What are they doing once they get there? So here's a few things that you can do to increase your ROI from Pinterest. So whether your numbers are going down or not, the first thing is to make sure that you have a way to continue the conversation with that person once they get to your site. So if they come to your blog post, for example, from Pinterest, do you have a lead magnet? Do you have something where that's enticing that they're going to want to get, that they can then give you their email address by a form or something like that? Sign up to be on your list. And then now you can continue having conversations with them on email. So the first thing is make sure that you have email or another way to continue the conversation. Some weaker ways would be things like saying, hey, follow me on Instagram, or join my Facebook group would be a little bit stronger than follow me on Instagram. In my opinion. So some way to continue the conversation. Another thing you want to do is make sure that you are really delivering on the promise of the pin. Does the pin really clearly share what it is that you are communicating, right? Does it really share what it is that you're offering? Make sure that it communicates that. And then if it does, that's what I call the promise of the pin. Here's what you're going to get when you come over to my site. Does your site really deliver on that? And I want to tell you, like, I call this the me principle because what we're doing right now is we're only focusing on ourselves. We're not focused on other people's pins. We're not focused on trying to finagle Pinterest. What we're looking at is what can I do on my site, on my side of the street, to make sure that my things are optimized and to help me get the best return on my investment possible. So email list or some kind of way to continue the conversation, make sure that the content delivers on the promise of the pin. And then let's talk about the pin itself. Let's make sure that the pin is standing out in search. Let's make sure that the pin makes it really super duper clear what it is that they're going to get. Let's make it super duper clear how this is different from all the other spaghetti recipes they're going to get. How is your spaghetti recipe different, better, more enticing, hitting their pain points more? How is it different than everybody else's spaghetti pin, right? Because that's what they need. That's what they need to know. When people are searching on Pinterest, they have an intent behind that search. And we want to make sure that we're hitting that intent really hardcore and really thinking about that. Again, all of this is focused on me, my own site, right? We're not worried about like what other people are doing on Pinterest. We're not worried about hacks. We're not worried about those things. These principles of focusing on me and the me principle, these are what is going to give you longevity on Pinterest. This is sustainable no matter what happens with the algorithm, because these are things that are going to help you not only on Pinterest, but on other platforms as well. right? So traffic comes from Google, same thing. We want to make sure that we're capturing that traffic so we can continue having a conversation. We want to make sure we're delivering on the promise. So I hope that that gives you some clarity on like what to focus on as far as the metrics that you should be paying attention to on Pinterest. Don't get bogged down by engagement and impressions and all those numbers that are very social media-esque numbers. Keep things super duper simple. Keep it focused on you, what you're doing on your site, how your pins are communicating. Put the time in to communicate clearly on your pins, and you're going to see a huge ROI. Now, would you like some guidance on how to do that? Of course you would. So that's what we do in my membership, Smart Pin Pro. And you can get a sneak peek into kind of how we do things over in our free Facebook group. I've included a link to that down in the description of this video where you can click on there and go check out our free Facebook group, joining our community and getting in on all that good stuff and start to see, some of the results that we've gotten as well as our approach. I'm all about helping you think about Pinterest in a different way to help you build that organic traffic machine instead of just doing all kinds of hacky things that are going to expire and leave you up blank creek without a paddle in 6 months to a year. So we're not about hacks or any of that kind of stuff. I'm all about longevity and long-term success. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you around here on wherever you watch this.